I'm not sure when I first realized I was invisible to my family. Not ignored. Invisible. Like a background prop in a perfectly staged performance, essential to the scene's balance, but never the point of focus. My name is Elodie Mercer, and for most of my 32 years I was the quiet daughter of a very loud family. The Mercers aren't famous in the celebrity sense, but in our corner of Connecticut, the name opens doors. My father owns half the downtown real estate, my mother chairs 5 charity boards, and my 2 older brothers, Lucas and Grant, have followed the family script with magazine cover precision. I didn't. Instead of going to Wharton or marrying a hedge fund baby, I teach high school literature. I drive a second-hand Prius and live in a converted attic above a bookstore owned by an old lesbian couple who bake muffins with questionable expiration dates. And I'm happy. Or at least I was. Until the funeral. My grandfather, Charles Mercer. The judge, as everyone called him, died 3 weeks ago. Heart attack. Fast. Clean. Rich man's exit. The church was overflowing. Politicians, CEOs, former clerks who owed their careers to him. There were velvet ropes and valet parking, and someone actually brought a drone to film the procession. I wore a navy dress I'd had since college and sat in the back pew like always. Lucas gave a speech about legacy. Grant cried, sort of. My parents exchanged tight smiles as if even grief had a PR plan. No one mentioned me, not once. But I expected that. What I didn't expect was the small object in my coat pocket that would change everything. It was a spool of deep blue embroidery thread. The thread had fallen out of my grandfather's journal a week earlier, when I'd visited the estate to help pack up his study. No one asked me to. Of course, I volunteered, because no one else wanted to touch the dusty room filled with old case files and leather-bound law reviews. I used to sit in that study, as a child, curled up in a window seat, stitching tiny birds onto scrap fabric, while Grandpa read depositions aloud like bedtime stories. The man had the warmth of granite, but when it was just the two of us sometimes, he'd soften, just enough to let me exist. He taught me to embroider, actually, said it was like legal argument. You start with one clean thread and pull it through the fabric of chaos until it holds. When I found that blue thread, again tucked between pages of his leather journal right next to a paperclip, and a name I didn't recognize, I kept it. I wasn't sure why. Now standing at the edge of his grave, I clutched it in my palm like a talisman. Miss Mercer, I turned. A man in a charcoal suit stood behind me holding a silver envelope. I'm Malcolm Rhee, your grandfather's personal attorney. He handed me the envelope. This is for you, alone. I blinked. It's probably meant for my father. No, he said. He was very clear. I opened it in my car. Inside was a single sentence in Grandpa's tight, unforgiving handwriting. Follow the thread. You know more than they think. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, turning the spool over and over in my hand. Follow the thread? What did that mean? A metaphor, a puzzle. The next morning I drove back to the estate. I told the housekeeper I'd left something in the study, and she waved me in distractedly. No one questioned me. Of course they didn't. I was Elodie, quiet, harmless, not worth noticing. In the study I opened every drawer, checked every shelf, nothing. Until I noticed the small stitch along the bottom of the window seat cushion. Blue, slightly frayed, hand sewn. Heart racing, I pulled out my embroidery scissors and carefully slit the seam. Inside was a folded piece of parchment. Old, crisp, labeled Property Transfer Contingency Clause, Mercer Holdings. And beneath it, another envelope. This one was labeled, to be opened only after the reading of my will, Elodie only, no exceptions. It was sealed with wax. I stared at it for a full minute before tucking it into my coat pocket. And just like that, I was no longer just the invisible daughter. I was holding something no one else knew existed. The official reading of the will was set for Friday. My mother called Thursday night using the tone she reserved for country club staff and baristas who got her order wrong. Elodie, darling, make sure you look presentable tomorrow. No cardigans. You represent the family, you know. No, I don't, I said flatly, but thanks. She hung up without replying. I laid out my outfit, simple black dress, the blue thread wrapped around my wrist like a bracelet. A silent rebellion. A promise. I had no idea what was coming, but I knew one thing. For once, they'd have to see me. The Mercer Estate Library hadn't changed in 20 years. Same marble fireplace, same blood-red rugs, same smug oil portraits of ancestors who probably committed light treason and got rewarded with property tax loopholes. The only thing new was the tension. Everyone was there. My parents sat closest to the fireplace, father in his navy power suit, mother in beige silk that cost more than my monthly rent. Lucas lounged beside his wife, Chelsea, already whispering. Grant stood near the bookshelves, arms crossed like he expected a hostile merger. Me, I was shown to a wooden chair behind a potted ficus. Not even subtle. No one said hello, no one even looked at me. But I didn't care, because in my coat pocket was the sealed envelope and wrapped around my left wrist was the thread. The longer I sat there, the more it burned like a fuse. At exactly 2:00 p.m., Malcolm Rhee walked in, carrying a thick leather folio. Calm, controlled, the kind of lawyer who probably rehearses eyebrow raises in the mirror. "Good afternoon," he said. "We're here to execute the last will and testament of Judge Charles Mercer." A few heads nodded. My father cleared his throat like he expected applause. "I'd like to begin by stating," Malcolm continued, "that Judge Mercer wrote this will entirely in his own hand. It is notarized, witnessed, and stored under strict confidentiality until this moment." Then he started reading. Lucas was first the lake house and a modest trust fund for his children. Grant a vintage Porsche and a majority share in Mercertech Wests. My parents received Artworks family heirlooms and a separate trust to continue their charitable foundations, which frankly existed mostly for tax strategy. As the list went on, I felt a strange emptiness grow in my chest. Maybe the envelope was nothing, a joke, a breadcrumb from a man who liked riddles. Maybe I'd made it all up in my head. But then Malcolm's tone changed. He looked up directly at me. Elodie Mae Mercer. Every neck in the room swiveled. My mother blinked as if someone had just spoken Mandarin. "Elodie," she repeated, "what on earth for?" Malcolm ignored her. Judge Mercer's final and most significant clause pertains to the consolidated assets of Mercer Holdings, the controlling interest in all operating entities, and the legal ownership of the family estate. He paused. I held my breath. "These assets," he said, "are hereby granted in full to Elodie Mae Mercer, effective immediately and irrevocably." Silence. No gasp, no scream. Just the kind of stunned stillness you'd get if someone fired a gun in a church. My father's voice broke the silence. "This is absurd." He stood up. "She's a schoolteacher. She doesn't know the first thing about running a family enterprise." Malcolm didn't flinch. Judge Mercer addressed that concern directly in a supplementary video. He pressed a button on the laptop beside him. The screen behind the fireplace lit up. And there he was. Grandpa Charles. He sat in his old leather chair, looking like he always had stern, skeptical stubborn. But this time, there was something gentler in his eyes. "If you're watching this," he began, "then the numbers have already been read, and the vultures are circling." Grant coughed. Lucas narrowed his eyes. "Let me make this clear. I didn't choose Elodie out of pity. I chose her because she's the only one who knows how to ask the right question, not just give the right answer." My mother's lips parted. I watched her blink twice. She never asked me for money, never fawned, never pretended to be something she wasn't. She listens, she thinks. She walks into a room and absorbs it instead of performing for it. He leaned forward. "Elodie was tested same as all of you. You just didn't realize it. You failed. She didn't." The screen went dark. I didn't move. I couldn't. Even though I'd half expected it, hearing it out loud felt like a punch to the ribs. Around me, the room exploded. "This is a farce," Lucas snapped. "She manipulated him. She was barely around," Grant barked. "She doesn't even know the board members." "She can't handle this," my mother whispered. Not to me, but to no one. Like her world was glitching, and she needed the air to explain it. Only Malcolm remained calm. "There are stipulations," he said, raising his voice over the chaos. "Any challenge to this will by a listed beneficiary will result in immediate forfeiture of said inheritance. He paused, let it sink in. Additionally, Ms. Mercer has full authority to revoke property access within 30 days to any current occupant of Mercer-owned residences. My parents both froze. They lived in a Mercer-owned brownstone on Oak Hill. So did Grant. Even Lucas's apartment was technically under a holding company Grandpa created. And I was the legal owner of everything. That night, I sat on the floor of my attic apartment, the envelope Grandpa left me finally opened in my lap. Inside was a single note. I couldn't teach them to see, but you, Elodie. You always did. Now it's your turn. Build what they were too blind to imagine. Tucked beneath it on cream stationery with embossed initials was a list of names. Not family, not board members, not lawyers. Whistleblowers. People Grandpa had been helping quietly, former employees, local business owners, even a paralegal he once fired, but later rehired, after discovering she'd been reporting workplace abuse. At the bottom of the page, start with Rebecca Lynn, next to it an address. I reread the line, hands shaking slightly. Then I unwrapped the blue thread from my wrist and pinned it to my wall right above the address. This wasn't just about inheritance. This was about something Grandpa had hidden in plain sight. Something deeper than money, bigger than legacy. A reckoning. I found Rebecca Lynn in a co-working space in Hartford, 2 floors above a vegan donut shop and next to an office that advertised crypto divorce mediation. She looked up as I entered, her expression guarded. Mid-30s, short hair, tailored jacket. Professional, calm. But her fingers never stopped drumming against a ceramic coffee mug. "You're Charles Mercer's granddaughter," she said without a hello. "Yes," I replied, suddenly unsure of what to say next. "I'm sorry to come unannounced. He left your name, with a list." She studied me for a moment. "You look like him? Around the eyes?" That surprised me. "I was told you worked for Mercer Holdings once," I said. "I did," she said flatly. "Until your Uncle Grant tried to pin a compliance scandal on me. Your grandfather found out, quietly made it right, paid my legal fees, helped me start this." She gestured around the room, whiteboards, laptops, a half-unpacked printer. I'm building a platform for corporate accountability. Whistleblower protections, transparency standards, ethical compliance structures. Boring stuff, but necessary." "And you're on the list," I said, holding out the note. She took it, read it once, twice. "Blue ink," she murmured. He always wrote in blue ink when it was something that mattered. Then she looked up at me. "Why now? Why you?" That question hit harder than it should have. Because I said quietly, I'm the only one who didn't ask for any of it. And the only one who's not trying to use it. Her eyes softened. "He trusted you," she said. "That's rare." Back at the estate, everything was cold. Literally, someone had turned off the central heating. Probably Grant. Or my mother in some petty tantrum disguised as elegance. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and walked through the west wing until I reached the old study again. Grandpa's study. His chair still faced the window. His ledger books still lined the wall. His scent sandalwood ink coffee still clung to the air. I unlocked the wall safe with my birth date. Inside was the thick, leather-bound journal I'd only skimmed the first few days. I opened it again now with intention. And that's when I saw them. Tabs, color-coded, dozens of them. Each one labeled in his tight scrawl. Lucas, falsified vendor reports. Grant, bribery investigation buried. Melinda, mom, trust manipulation, laundering. And one in a different color. Elodie, quiet witness, pay attention. My breath caught. I flipped to the page. She never knew I was watching. Never knew I was testing. That was the beauty of it. I didn't want her to perform. I wanted to see who she was when no one was looking. He wrote about the times I helped the kitchen staff with cleanup during banquets. The night I stayed behind to comfort a crying niece. The summer I donated my entire paycheck from tutoring to a fund for a janitor's daughter with leukemia. He saw. He remembered. He recorded it. I had been invisible, yes, but not to him. And now every thread he left was turning into a map. That week things started escalating. First I received an email from the Mercer Holdings board. Subject request for interim leadership discussion. Given your inexperience and lack of operational familiarity, we suggest installing a temporary executive committee to assist in transition. Translation, they were trying to neuter my authority before I even got started. Then came the legal threats. An attorney representing Lucas called my assistant. Yes, I now had an assistant demanding clarity on the Oak Hill Properties deed. Then a bouquet arrived. White roses. No card. Creepy as hell. I wasn't scared exactly, but I was starting to understand just how deeply rooted the Mercer machine really was. The money wasn't the engine. The silence was. The power came from what never got spoken, what never got challenged. I wasn't supposed to lift the veil, but I already had. Rebecca emailed me 3 days later with a document. "See attached," she wrote. "This is the first thread you'll want to pull. Be careful, it's tied to the education fund." The education fund. The charity my mother founded in Grandpa's name. The same one she used to get glowing press features about wealth with conscience. I opened the attachment. It was a spreadsheet of grants, except the addresses didn't match any schools. One led to a boutique travel agency, another to a ghost nonprofit that shared a bank account with a Mercer Holdings vendor, and one flagged in red traced back to a PAC that had donated heavily to a Senate campaign Lucas was quietly funding. It wasn't just about stealing. It was laundering influence through a charity, and the whole family was complicit. My stomach twisted. I should have felt triumph, proof, leverage, but instead I just felt sick. I looked down at the blue thread still pinned to my corkboard, and I remembered what Grandpa had said. Pull it through the chaos until it holds. Okay then, let's pull. The morning the article broke, I was at the garden behind the estate, staring at a frost-covered bench, where Grandpa used to drink his afternoon coffee. The headline hit my phone like a punch. Education for All Mercer Family Fund, tied to political PAC laundering scheme, Hartford Sentinel Investigative Desk. Byline Rebecca Lynn. She hadn't warned me. I understood why journalistic integrity timing control of the story, but it still stung. Inside the article were exact figures, transactions, screenshots of shell accounts. Everything we'd uncovered together, everything my family thought would stay buried. And then buried halfway down, a source close to the Mercer family confirmed that Charles Mercer's granddaughter and sole heir, Elodie Mercer, initiated the internal review. There it was. My name, on record, tied to truth. By noon, my phone had 43 missed calls. By 3 p.m., a black SUV was parked across the street from my apartment in the city. By 4 p.m., someone had keyed the word traitor into the side of my Prius. That night, I packed a small overnight bag and drove back to the estate. Not because it felt safer, but because it was mine. And I refused to be chased out of what was legally, rightfully, morally mine. They came at dinner. Unannounced, of course. I was microwaving leftover curry when I heard the Mercedes screech up the drive. Seconds later, the doorbell echoed through the halls. When I opened the door, my mother swept in first. Not a word, just perfume and fury. Grant followed, then Lucas. No Chelsea, no spouses, just bloodlines and betrayal. "Sit," my mother snapped as if this were a debutante crisis and not white-collar fraud. I didn't move. "This is my house. If you want to talk, you ask." Politely. Her mouth twitched. She sat. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she hissed. "That article is going national. CNN just called. CNN Elodie. Our name. Your name is being dragged through the gutter." I folded my arms. "Then you probably shouldn't have stolen from school children." Lucas bristled. "That fund was vetted. If there were irregularities." Don't I cut him off? I have the files. I have bank statements, shell company registries, campaign disclosures. I didn't release them, Rebecca did. I gave her permission. That's all. Grant leaned forward. Why would you torch everything we've built?" I laughed, dry, exhausted. "You think this family was built? No. It was stitched shut with silence and bribes. It was embalmed in legacy. All I did was open the window." My mother's voice went low, dangerous. "You've made enemies, Elodie." "So have you," I replied, "but at least mine are honest about it." She stood, pacing now. "Do you know what your grandfather made us promise before he died? That we'd take care of you, protect you, even if you never earned it." I stared at her. "I didn't earn it," I whispered. I lived my entire life as a footnote in this family. I was quiet, polite, useful, but never honored. And the moment I hold a mirror up to your lies, you call me a traitor." She paused. For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Not guilt. Fear. "You're not ready for what comes next," she said. "You don't understand what this world does to people who try to tear down systems, especially systems they've inherited." I looked at her. Really looked. My mother, the master of image. And for once she wasn't composed. She was unraveling. That night I locked the doors, set the alarm, slept with the blue thread wrapped around my wrist again. Not because I was scared, because I needed to remember. Remember who I was before all this. Before I was someone's headline. Before I was anyone's target. Just Elodie, teacher, threadkeeper, truth watcher. In the days that followed, everything escalated. The board froze certain accounts, pending inquiry. Lucas issued a press statement denouncing rogue elements in the family. Grant launched a counter-narrative campaign online, fake blog posts, whisper PR, even an ex-boyfriend of mine who suddenly resurfaced with concerns about my mental state. It was coordinated. It was vicious, but it was also weak. Because every time they tried to fabricate something, I dropped another receipt. Emails, donor records. A memo from Grandpa to the internal legal team titled, "If they turn on her, here's why." I started calling it the insurance file. And it had footnotes, signed in blue ink. But the real turning point came from the last name on Grandpa's list. Thomas Bell, audit chief, retired. I found him living in a retirement community outside New Haven. He was 90, half blind, but when I introduced myself, his spine straightened like a soldier. I was wondering when someone would show up. He said, voice gravelly but clear, "Charles said you'd come." He handed me a key. Storage locker. Unit 219. North Haven facility. Kept it for years. Didn't dare destroy it. But I couldn't look at it either. "What's inside?" I asked. He looked me dead in the eye. "Everything your family tried to bury, the real books." The storage locker looked like any other. Metal door, dust-lined hallway, flickering light overhead. But when I rolled up the latch, the past hit me in the face like a gust of mothballs and ink. There were 8 boxes, each one labeled meticulously in Grandpa's handwriting. Q3 financials, falsified Lucas. Shell vendors, campaign trail. Whistleblower, intimidation logs. Melinda, Grant, influence laundering. Payouts to silence auditors. Board complicity, 2013-2020. I sat on the concrete floor for 4 hours, skimming page after page. This wasn't just greed. This was a machine run by fear and vanity and silence, where my entire family had played a part. A system built not just on shady ethics, but on the assumption no one would ever look too closely. Until now. The blue thread was looped around my finger like a lifeline. I stared down at one final box, smaller than the rest, tucked under the ledgers. For Elodie, open last. Inside a sealed letter, Grandpa's handwriting. Again. Mirror. I know this weight is too much for one person to carry, but I also know you won't drop it. This isn't about punishing them. It's about changing what made them this way. Use it all, but wisely. Love, Grandpa C. And under that letter, a flash drive. I didn't go to the press. Not yet. Instead, I called an emergency board meeting. They thought I was coming to apologize, or compromise, or be outvoted. But when I walked into that room, I didn't bring tears or rage. I brought a projector. "Before we begin," I said calmly, "I'd like to show you something." The screen lit up with scanned documents, bank wires, legal memos, surveillance screenshots, internal Slack messages, a voice memo from Lucas's burner phone. All of it time-stamped, verified. One by one, I revealed the entire scope of corruption. The room fell into a stunned silence. Then I handed them a folder, restitution plan and new Mercer Holdings. The document outlined full cooperation with authorities, immediate resignation of complicit board members, establishment of an ethics oversight division reporting directly to an independent public auditor, a community reinvestment fund to support education, small businesses, and whistleblower protections, a shift in company charter From profit first to impact first, legally binding. This is non-negotiable, I said quietly. You can sign and rebuild, or you can sink with the ship. Either way, I'm not staying silent. Grant stormed out. Lucas refused to speak, but 4 board members signed on the spot. By week's end, 2 more followed. The old system was breaking, and something cleaner, slower maybe, but true was taking root in its place. A month later, I stood at the annual shareholder meeting. For the first time, the room wasn't just suits and legacy names. It included employees from every division, community members, and recipients of the new fund. I didn't give a speech about growth or graphs. I told them a story about a girl who used to sit quietly in the back row, who watched everything, who listened, who stitched birds into napkins while her family built empires, and how that same girl now held the thread that would repair the fabric they'd all torn apart. That night I visited Grandpa's grave. I didn't bring flowers. I brought a finished embroidery hoop. It showed a bird in flight, threaded in deep blue. I placed it at the base of the headstone, whispering, "You stitched the frame, Grandpa. I just filled it in." Then I walked back toward the future, not as the girl they overlooked, but as the woman they couldn't ignore.